Hey, okay. Hey, sorry, not sure why it's to meeting chat groups. Okay, let me try one more time. Okay, I think all three files sent over. Can you all see the file?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let me minimize this, and we will begin the session today. So we will be going through this Excel VBA. Of course, VBA here can be used for other or in other Microsoft Office software as well, right? So such as Word, PowerPoint, but of course we focus on Excel today. Okay, so let's look at this one here. So this, how can I? Okay, I'm not too familiar with Teams. Okay, right. So these are the four kind of like small section that we will be going through today. So of course we start with recording macros and then look at the VBA environment, so such as the interface and so on. So the second one would be a quick one, and then the third one would be writing VBA code. Here we again focus on just a quick and simple example only. So basically the main objective or the main idea here for the 2.5 hour session, we focus on looking at the how to read and also debug the code, because most of the times we are able to do recording, but we will illustrate later, sometimes macro recording can lead to a problem as well. So of course, the last section probably slightly more kind of like writing the syntax or the coding part, where we try to create a user-defined function and then automate some function. We won't be going into too details or too complicated. We focus on some of the simple example. So screenshot here, basically there are some screenshot, for example, something like this. So you may notice that the interface probably a little bit different with yours, and if you are not using the Excel 365. So some of the keyboard shortcut that we will be using basically on Windows version. So if you are using Mac, probably you got to change a little bit, like the control key becomes command key and so on. So that's the introduction here. Now let's look at how do we perform a macro recording. So macro recording, basically what it means is like we want to record what we are doing with the Excel file and then replay that later. That means we want to get the macro to be replayed later. So we can repeat that action as long as, for example, we press a keyboard shortcut key or we click on a button, then we want to redo that action again. So in order to do that, first thing, or in any other cases, when you want to do or deal with VBA, you have to go to Developer tab or enable the Developer tab. So go to File Option, and then you will see Customize Ribbon, and then check Developer. Take this one. Okay, so let me start the one blank Excel file, and then we go through this one together. Right, so let me zoom in a bit. Right, and then we can start with some magnifier. Okay. Right, so go to the file here. Of course, the interface may be different, and then let me minimize this one. So we go down to options. It should be at the last one, right? And then so we will have this Windows pop up, and then go to Customize Ribbon, and then click at Customize Ribbon. And then you will see scroll down a little bit. There's a Developer tab here. Of course, by default, it should be unchecked. So we can just check this one or tick this one and then click OK. Right. So once we have this one, then this thing, click OK. Okay. Right. So we can go to the ribbon here. So the buttons here on top of the Excel file, right? So these are called ribbon. and you will see one tab here, developer tab. So you can click at this one, and then you probably will see some of these things here, and the record macro button is on the left-hand side.
Excuse me, Doctor, do you mind to repeat again?
Yes.
When we go to the customized ribbon, what should we click? Thanks.
Okay, so we can go to customize ribbon, and then the second panel here, right? The developer tab here, you can default it should be unchecked. So you tick this one, make sure that it is ticked, and then click OK. So you can if I'm going too fast, then probably one of the you can click refer to the steps here, 1, 2, and then you click OK. Of course, I forgot to circle this one. Right. So far so good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I put this one here. Our slides is already in the chat box, so you can download from here the NTW20240625. So you can download that. Okay, right. So now, once we have this one, of course, we can try to play around with recording macro. So you will see developer tab. You can click at the button record macro. And then once you click this one, you will see a window pop up. Write in the name and the keyboard shortcut to replay that recording. So basically, the keyboard shortcut here is where later on, when you press a keyboard, the control, say Control A or Control T, something like that. So you want to replay what we have done earlier. Okay, so description, of course, you can leave it blank if you are doing or dealing with this project alone. So usually you put some description when you share the project with other people or cooperate with other people. Okay, right. So that's this one. So we can try to play around with recording, macro recording. Say like scroll down or add a new worksheet and so on. So let's look at this one. This is the Excel file, right? So developer tab, of course, I click at this developer tab and then go to the left-hand side. I'm now on the top left corner of the screen, right? So you can click the record macro button. So you will see these windows pop up, and then of course we can give a name, right? So like this is some simple example. Okay, so the name here, of course, we give a name like this. Try not to use the white space, right? So white spaces, you try not to use that. Either you leave it without the space or with underscore. And then shortcut key here, you have Control, and then you can use any key that you probably won't be using too frequently. So for example, Control A, you may not want to use Control A, right? So because Control A is to select all. You also don't want to use Control T because Control T is where you want to convert a range to a table. So maybe we try Control K, something like that, or Control K should be good, or Control Q should be good as well. Okay, so you see, I'm just pressing the keyboard K, so it is a lowercase k here. If you want to use Control Shift K, then you just kind of like type in the capital K. So I type Shift K. So Control Shift, and this K is actually a capital letter. Okay, so we use a lowercase, easier. Okay, so let me zoom out first. And now, of course, we can click OK now. So now what we want to do is we try to scroll the screen a little bit. Of course, you can also focus on the screen that I'm presenting. So say I scroll down a little bit, and then we stop the recording. Okay, so now, well, a bit noisy. So now what happened here is that we can actually press the Control K to replay this one. So now I'm not touching on the keyboard or the mouse, right? So I'm using Control K. You can see they will actually scroll 15 rows because initially we scroll up to 16, right? So 1 to 16 is 15 rows. So every time I press the Control K, you can see the row here, which is on the left-hand side, you can focus here, right? So you can see these numbers are changing. because the recording is actually replay. Okay. So now let's try another one. Let me see if there's any. Yeah, no problem. So let's try another one so we can see let's say we record the macro by adding the worksheet, right? So same thing here. We can actually use a simple example underscore. Again, don't use white spaces. Say number 2, right? So now we don't want to use Control K anymore. We use Control Q, let's say. So description, usually I will leave it blank. So we click OK. And then now it's recording. You can observe from the top left corner here, there's a stop recording button, but don't click on that because it is recording. So what we want to do now is, of course, we just want to add a new worksheet, right? So just click like that, and then we stop the recording. Let's see. Okay, so we stop the recording, and then now, so for the new version or the 365, you will see this Office script here. So you can just ignore this one. We won't be touching that one. Okay, so again, you see, once I press Control Q on my keyboard, we expect a new worksheet to be added, right? So this is worksheet 3. Let's zoom in and see, right? And then Control Q again, you see worksheet 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically, macro recording is something that is quite useful, where you can actually record what you want. Okay, so even for example, say if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you say, okay, every time I have this cell, I want to change the color and then change the background color and the font color, right? So say I change it to green color and then change the font to red color. Okay, so we have 2 steps to do. One of the ways, again, you can use a record macro, and then you say, I record down this action so that I can repeat this one in the future. Let's let's zoom in first. Okay, right, so simple example 3, right? So this example, we want to just change the background color and change the font color. Okay, so of course, once we started recording, we go to home and then we just click whatever we want to do, right? So the green color background, the red color font, and then if let's say you want to do a formatting like 1000 separator, okay, so we stop here, go to the developer tab, and then stop recording. So, sorry, I forgot to put in the keyboard shortcut just now. So let's try this one more time. So let's redo this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So macro recording, now we use simple example, probably we have to use number 4. Okay, and then I forgot again. Sorry. I mean, anyway, we can edit the macro, but we will leave the editing to later. Simple example number 6, let's say. So the keyboard shortcut here, we use Control W, let's say, right? So, okay, go to Home tab, we change the background color, change the font color, put in 1000 separator, and then now we stop the recording. We just want to replace this one later, right? So now say 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we can actually just use Control W, right? So you will basically do all 3 steps in one keyboard shortcut. So that's the macro recording part. Okay, of course you can discard this one. Okay, good. Right, so now we look at this case here where we want to, okay, by the way, one thing is that about this macro recording part here, right? So usually you can only deal with the content in the file only. That means if you start a new Excel file, you repeat the same keyboard shortcut, it won't be there because the macro is saved in the Excel file, not in the PC, right? So now what we want to do, let me just close this file and then start a new one. Okay, so when you want to save a file that contains macro, usually, let's say, let me just cancel this one. Let's say if we save this file, right? We save this one. Okay, let me click more options. Okay, good. Save to my desktop, right? So this is some macro recording example. Okay, so when we save this one, of course, sometimes you want to, just make sure that, let me zoom in. You don't want to save as Excel workbook because Excel workbook is the file type that contains no macro. So if you want to have a macro, we save it as Excel macro enable workbook, which is usually the second one. Okay, so you can click at this one and then you can click save. So in this case, then there will be no issue. If let's say you save with Excel file, which is the default one, Excel workbook, you will see this warning pop up saying that may not be exactly the same, saying that this one contains a macro. Okay, so if you want to save the macro itself, so you save macro enable. Then you click save. So this file will be there. Okay. So let's say you can see this file is here. And then of course, if we start the file again, you can still use the code because okay, so you start the file again, there's a yellow color bar here. You have to enable this one. This is a security features where sometimes you download files from internet that may contain macros that do harm to your PC. Okay, so you have to be very careful if you download Excel file that contains VBA or macro. You have to be very careful. So this one is what we created. So you can just click enable, right? And then you can repeat or continue to use the keyboard that we have done, keyboard shortcut that we have done. Control Q to add worksheet, and then Control W to do the formatting and so on. So it would be still there. It would be still there, right? Okay, so now let's start. Let me start a new Excel file just to illustrate what we are trying to demonstrate here. So what we have demonstrated is that how we can use macro recording to simplify or to repeat the action. This example number one that is in the slides is basically to illustrate when this macro recording can actually cause a problem, right? So let's look at this one. What we want to do here is to enter a number 1, 2. Basically, these are the 5 steps here. So you use a macro recorder, you start recording, key in 1 and then key in 2 in A1 and A2. So when we say A1, A2, we are referring to column A, row 1. So we type a 1 here, type a 2 here. So you have a 1, 2 here. And then the second bullet point, select A1, A2. So the column sign here is basically to show that this is a range from A1 to A2, right? So we select, basically use the mouse, click and drag, select in this way. Drag to A20, basically we use the autofill features so that we have a number 1 to 20, right? So it's a very simple example again. So you see I drag to 20, I release, we get 1 to 20 here. And then what we want to do next is to make column B double the value of column A, right? So this one involves some formula. So we press equal and then you can click at the cell A1 and then asterisk is the multiplication times 2, right? So you want to double it up, so multiply by 2. Press enter, you get a 2 here. Okay, right? So now you can see once we have this 1 to 20 and 2 here, you move your cursor. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. So once you have keyed in this formula, A1 times 2, right? So we press enter, we get to this scenario, and then you can move your cursor to the bottom right of the selected cell, which is B1 here, and you double click so that you can send the formula down, or you can kind of like autofill the formula until the last row here, which is row 20. So you have every number here to be double. Okay, right. So far, so good. Okay. Right. So now of course, what we want is to do a macro recording. So I will just start again and start with the recording macro, right? So developer tab again, click record macro, and then of course give a name. Now we give a name, example 1. You can give the same name now because you start with a new workbook. Okay, so Control K, the same keyboard shortcut, and then let's click OK. Right, so now what we want to do here is, of course, you type in a 1, just follow the bullet point here, right? So a 1, and then press enter. Key in a 2. Remember, we have to press the button recording, right? So it's actually recorded. All the action is recorded. So when all the action are recorded, you don't simply click like I click C2, C3, click here and there, and then come back. So we don't click anything. So you see, I leave my mouse at one side. I don't click anything until this moment. I move my cursor to the A1 because I want to select them. This is the third bullet point, and then move to the bottom right. And when the white color cursor, the cursor in white, change to black color plus sign, you click and drag, right? So we click and drag until row 20. In fact, it can be row 10, doesn't really matter. Row 20 is just an arbitrary number. Okay, so once you have 1 to 20, the numbers, and what we want to do here, of course, is that we want to double up this one, right? So equal to, and then any formula starts with equal sign, and then click this A1 cell. So you see A1 here, don't click anything, leave the mouse at one side again, press or type asterisk, shift 8 basically, and then times 2. Okay, now you have a double, and then, sorry, this step a bit fast. Move to the bottom right of the cell and then double click again so that you can copy the formula down or autofill the formula down. And then now, of course, we got to just scroll a little bit to check. So we make sure that everything is here. Scroll back. Technically, we shouldn't scroll because the recording, macro recording will record our action of scrolling as well. Okay, so but this is just a demonstration. So once everything is done, so we press stop recording button, which is on the top left corner again. Okay, so that's what we have here. If you have any questions, you can let me know. So far, no one. Okay, so what we do here is, of course, you can see we key in 1 to 20, and then we key in 2 to 40 in column B and column A of respectively. So if we delete this one, we press Control K, you can see that we repeat this action again, right? So let's try one more time. Sorry, Control K. We delete, right, blank cell, and then Control K, you get everything repeated. So let's try one more time. Delete, and it doesn't work now, right? So you see, let's delete again. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, right? So it's a bit weird here. Let's try one more time. Okay, so you probably notice that there are some issue here. Sometimes you have a blank cell in A1. Oh, a bit noisy, the renovation. And you have the one here in F1, right? So let's delete again. And then Control K. So you can, sorry, you can see 1 is here, 2 is here. It's a bit off. And if we delete one more time and try, this works now. Okay, so that is where macro recording sometimes can lead to a problem. In fact, it has no problem, but we have to understand how it works. Okay, so one of the things is that let's say if we recall what we do initially, right? So let me close this file because I want to start from a blank file again. So let's recall exactly what we have done step by step. Zoom in doesn't really matter, it won't change anything, right? So I zoom in just so that everyone can see clearer. Okay, so you see the first step that we do, or the first step that I did just now, was to press a 1 here. And we press a 1 because A1 is already selected. Let me zoom in. Not to this extent, right? So we press the 1 here because A1 is already selected. So that means to say the first step that we do is actually key in a 1. You see, the first step is key in a 1. And then after the enter, the cell goes to A2. And then you press a 2, right? So that was my step just now. and then I select and so on. Okay, so that's why you see, if I repeat the macro recording just now, you will notice a problem there is that sometimes the one is at C1, the one is at C2, and so on, because there is no, the first step that we do is not to select cell A1. The first step that I did just now was basically to key in a 1. So that leads to the problem. So let's try this one again. Let me try a quick one. Okay, how to hide this one? Right, so now observe, I selected D3 here, right, or somewhere else. So now I'm just using example 1 again. New. Okay, so I use a Control W as a keyboard shortcut now. I click OK. So you see, in this case, because these 3 is here, is already selected. If I want to key in a 1 in A1, we have to click at A1, right? So we use the mouse to click at A1. So you see, I select here, I press a 1, I press enter. Then I press a 2, I press enter. So in this case, you will see that there will be no issue. Let me just drag up to 9. Doesn't really matter. So times 2. So I will just quickly do this one. Okay, right. So we stop the recording. Okay, and then let's delete this one and then Control W. You will see that it looks good. It doesn't really matter how we delete this one now. You see, I can delete from here and then Control W. I get everything perfect. Okay, so that's basically what we have here on the macro recording, because sometimes a small action that we actually unintentionally click on may be recorded as well. It will be recorded, so it may lead to a problem the next time you want to replay the macro. So having recording is not the best solution, but we need to know how to edit the code as well. So let's try again on this example 1 just now. Right, so we use the Control K just now. We did just now was press a 1, enter, press a 2, enter. We never select until this point of time. And then we repeat until row 20. Okay, and then we key in a function or formula times 2, and then send it down. Okay, right, so now we stop the recording and then delete this one. So you can see Control K, it works again. And of course, if I delete this one and then I click at somewhere else, say default, Control K doesn't work again, right? So from our explanation just now, we know that the sorry, the issue is that because the first step, we are not selecting A1. We never click at A1. So that leads to this problem. Okay, so how do we deal with this one? One of the ways, of course, you can re-record this one and make sure that you click at A1 first. Of course, another way is that we can actually edit this, what is that called? This code. Okay, so we will look at editing the code later. We leave this code in this way for a moment. We will edit the code so that the code works perfectly later. Okay. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now, if you look at how do we run a macro, one of the ways is using keyboard shortcut, which is what we have done earlier. So when we record the macro, we assign a keyboard shortcut to the macro, and then when we press, for example, Control K, so the recorded macro will be replayed, right? So this is one of the ways. We can also use other ways, for example, macro buttons. You can insert the click at the macro buttons here from Developer tab, and then run the code also. You can also insert a shape to run the code, and you can click F5. So the last one, we leave it to later part. Now we look at macro buttons and also using a shape. Okay, so what do we mean by macro button? So basically is this one here, right? So we can go to again the developer tab here on the ribbon, and then left hand side there is a macro, not record macro, but the second button. I mean the alignment or the layout of the buttons may be different in your Excel file, but the name should be the same, macros. Or you can also use the keyboard shortcut alternate F8. Okay, but you can click this one, and then you will see all the macros that you have recorded here. And then you can click, for example, let's say this one, example 1. So I select this macro and I click run. So they will run the code as well. Okay, so let's delete this one and see record macro, and then we run the example 1. You will expect some error there that looks like this, right? Okay, so that is the second way you want to run a macro. That means to say, if in case when you record the macro, you did not assign a keyboard shortcut to it, or you don't want to assign, that is okay. You can run from here as well. Of course, let's say if you forgot to assign a keyboard shortcut to the macro, so what do we do is that you can actually select the code that you want, right? And then you click edit. You can also, sorry, not edit. Let me edit is the F5 later. Okay, so options, right? So you can click at the options here, and then you can see the keyboard shortcut is K. You can change to other keyboard as well. For example, Q or K, W. We will just remain it as K. But in case you forgot to assign, you can also edit it from here. Okay, so these are like the second. This is the second way to execute this macro. A third way is that you can always insert a shape or buttons. There are a few ways. We just go through one of the simple one, right? So under the insert tab in the ribbon, go to shape, and then you can insert any shape, for example, a triangle. Okay, so I have a triangle shape here. Now, of course, we can click on the shape and then move around, right? So you right click here, the shape, and then you will notice that there is a assign macro. After you right click, let's see, right click, then you see assign macro here. You can click at this one, assign macro, and then you choose the macro that you want to assign to this shape. So for example, this example 1 again, then we click OK. So once we have this shape done, then of course, what you can see here is that, let's say, if we click the button, so you see when I move my cursor to this triangle, it's no longer like a plus sign, right? So it changed to what's that called? Like a finger or a palm sign that you can actually click. So let's click it now. So I click it, you see the code is executed. Okay, so we can actually select here and then click. So you get everything done. So this is another way you can assign the macro to the shape. Again, you can insert any shape. It can be any shape, right? So for example, of course, usually you use like a shape that looks like button. Right click and then assign macro, and then you can assign, like for example, any macro, and then you click OK, then you get the, click on the shape. You can also write a text on the shape, right? So right click and then edit text. So click here, for example, and then we can align center a bit so that you can actually click here, and then it becomes kind of like a button. Of course, there's no animation here, but there's other ways, but we don't go into too details yet. Okay, right. So these are basically the two different ways on another 2 ways on running the code. So of course, using a shape and or buttons would be actually one of the most commonly used approach. Okay. So now let's look at this part on how do we actually edit a macro. So we will run the code using the keyboard F5, keyboard shortcut F5 later after we edit the code. So remember, we have one recording that does not do what we want as always, right? So sometimes it depends on where you are actually selecting the cell. Okay, so how do we edit this one? So we want to bring up the VBA editor first. So to bring up the VBA editor, you can press alternate F11, and then module is the module that we want to edit. Sub is the subroutine basically. Okay, right. Let's look at this case here. Let me remove all the shapes a bit. We don't need the shape here. Okay, so delete this one. Right, so now we want to edit the code. One of the ways that again, you can go to this developer tab and then go to macro, the buttons, or you can use F11, alternate F11, the keyboard shortcut. Okay, and then select the one that you want to edit. Right, click edit. So again, developer tab. So click at developer tab, macro. So select these two are the recording, right? So we recorded these two separately. So you have two kind of like two functions here or two subroutine. And then you choose the one that you want to edit, click edit. So you will see this is the code that what we have done. You see, we have a keyboard shortcut of Control K. Of course, anything that starts with apostrophe is a command. Okay, so you can write anything here because it is a command. In VBA, this is green color. So this is command. You will see that it becomes a green color, right? Because it starts with apostrophe. That means to say, if you change the K to W, it does not change the keyboard shortcut. You have to change from the option just now. Okay, this is just a command. And then you will see what the code is actually doing, right? So if you read the code here, you see the code is actually quite simple, a few lines only. So active cell dot formula R1C1. So we kind of like ignore all these things a little bit first. So active cell basically means that which cell is currently active, right? So the active here means the selected cell. So the currently that is selected one, you key in a value of 1. So of course, we always pass the value from right to left. So you pass a value 1 into the active cell. You see, we are not passing the value into cell A1. That caused the problem, right? So in order to make sure that we add one more line before that, okay, so we will add one line before this first line here to make sure that we select the cell A1. How to do that? So range, so you can refer to the second line here, range A2.select, right? So range, we can just edit a little bit A1, close the bracket, dot select. So you will see as you type, there will be a Windows pop up and you can select. So this is good because you know what you type here can be selected. I mean, you can choose from here. So that means to say you are using the correct spelling or correct syntax. Okay, sometimes you say, oh, range A1 dot activate. Can we activate that? You can, right? So range A1 dot anyway, we use select. Okay, dot select. So you see, we added this line. And what does this line what this line does is basically saying that regardless of what you have selected earlier, the first line we always select back A1. Then only you start to key in the value and continue what we have here, right? So this is also consistent with our discussion just now that the code is giving us some problems sometimes because we are not selecting A1 at the beginning. So now we add this line to make sure that this is selected. Okay, so now once you have this one, of course, you can just, let me zoom out a bit. So you see this whole thing here is the VBA editor. I can make this one smaller. So that easier for us. Okay, right. So this is the window VBA editor windows. Okay, good. Right, so we can close this one. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to save this one because what you want to save is the whole Excel file later. Okay, so you can again click at the macro and then you can edit this again, so you can see this line is there. Okay, so one way is that now we can try Control K you will see that it works perfectly now, regardless of what where we selected. You see, I can select column F and then it works fine. Okay. Of course, we can also go to this macro and then edit this one. I mean, you can use other way to bring up this window. For example, alternate plus F11. So this is a keyboard shortcut to bring up the VBA editor. Right, so alternate F11. Right, so you can bring up this one here. Now, to run the code, you will see that there are two subroutines here. Let me maximize this one first. So there are two subroutines here. There is example 1 new and also example 1. So the one that starts with sub and then you have end sub. So this whole thing is basically one recording, right? So one recording. This is the second recording. This is the one that we have edited. Okay. So now, of course, you can also make sure that your cursor, let me zoom in so that you can see clearer. So you can click anywhere. So you see cursor is blinking inside the subroutine that you want to run. Okay, then you press F5 in your on your keyboard to run this one. Make sure that cursor is inside the subroutine that you want to run. So you press F5 and then you will notice that you have this code executed, right? So again, you can delete this one. You see, let's run here. So observe that the cursor now is in the kind of like middle of the screen here. Then I press F5. So this is executed. Okay, so of course, F5, you have to go into the VBA editor, then only you can use that. Okay. So far, so good, huh? Okay. Any questions, you can drop a message in the chat box. On and off, I will be back to the chat box and then have a look at that. Okay. So that was what we have done earlier on macro recording. So now you can save the file, or you can actually close the file without saving if you think you don't want to keep that file. Right, so we start with second example. Let me close this file. Okay, so we try a second example here by adding a new worksheet and then also renaming the worksheets. And then we look at how the code is actually being written or recorded, right? So we have tried adding a new worksheet just now, but we have not looked at the code yet, right? So okay, good. Right, so developer tab again. So let me record the macro and then you see, let me see what name I use here. So okay, right, so I did not specify what name. So we can use any name here, macro name. Let's say add new worksheet. Okay, right. So whether you want keyboard shortcut key or not, doesn't really matter here. I won't be adding it because we won't run this one too many times. I just want to illustrate how do we edit the code. Okay, so then we can click OK. So it's recording now because we see stop recording here. Go down and then we click on the add new worksheet. Okay, so we stop this recording. So we have done this one just now, right? And then the second thing that we want to do is that we want to record the macro again. And then now we say rename worksheet. So we give a name so that easier for us to refer to later. Okay, so click OK. And then of course you can scroll down to say, sorry, this part here. So click at the old worksheet. Sorry, we want to rename this one. So rename this to new worksheet, let's say. Then press enter. Okay. So what we have been doing is actually just a normal Excel operations, right? So, but then we are using a macro recording. Okay, so we have done these two tasks here, and then you can try to edit this video, right? So, for example, sorry, not video, the VBA. So let's look at the. So remember just now we go to developer tab, and then you can click at the macro and then edit these two. Because I start a new one, so you see I have only two macro here. There's another way also. You can click at the view code, which is somewhere in the middle, right? So view code, and then you will have this window pop up. Okay, so if you use view code, then you have to go to the VBA editor here. Left-hand side, you will see module 1. So double-click the module 1, either module 1 or module 2, some of the modules. So it should be under the modules. It depends on how many times you have recorded, actually. So you will see this is a new, there are two tools recording, right? So the first one is we add a new worksheet. The second one is you rename that. Okay, so what we want to do is that we want to just edit the code a little bit so that we can add a new worksheet. Let me just minimize this one for a while. Right, remember when we add a new worksheet just now, this is the first one, original one, right? Sheet 1. And then after you click on add new worksheet will be added afterwards. That means on the right-hand side, this one. So if you want to make sure that it is added on the left-hand side, that means instead of going to the right, but go to the left. So what we want to do is basically just to change this thing here from the macro recording part. Sheets.add after you change to before, right? So before what? Before the active worksheet, right? So if I change it to here, then you see, let me zoom out, and then I can run the macro here, press F5. Observe on the bottom left corner here, what happened to the worksheets, the bottom left, right? So now let's press F5 and see, you will see worksheet 3, is added to the left. So of course, we can continue to add more worksheets here, 4, 5, 6. So it will be added to the left-hand side instead of the right-hand side. So that is the before and after here. Of course, what we can do is also to change the worksheet name. That is okay. So that is the first task here. Second task here is that you want to rename the worksheets. You can actually look at what we have done here. We select the second worksheet and then the name. You assign a new text to it, right? So the new worksheet is actually this name here, this one, right? So if you want to change the code a little bit so that you can actually rename the worksheet according to the value in cell A1, let's say. Let me just zoom in a bit. Yeah. Okay. Right. So now let's see if we type in cell A1 some name, random name, let's say, right? So we hope that we can run the code and then we rename this worksheet to the value in cell A1. So how do we do that? Let's look at the code. So we just want to arrange this thing a little bit. So you see the name here, the worksheet name is here. We have not edited the code yet. So now, looking at this one, then you will see it seems a bit weird here. There is like the sheets. This is the object, and then this is the name, right? So we say, okay, what you want to select? You want to select worksheets, and then which worksheet you want to select? The name number 2. So this is in fact not the name, it's the ID. So just imagine there is like IC number and also the name, right? So over here, the way we refers to is actually by using the ID, which is kind of like the IC number. So you can see on the left-hand side here, there will be 2 parts. So worksheet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these are the ID. And you see over here in the bracket 1, these are the name. if you compare a little bit, oops, to this one. Let me adjust a bit. Right, so you can see worksheet 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. The ID and the name are the same, except for worksheet number 2, because we have renamed that. So the ID is still 2, but the name is new worksheet. Okay, so that is why we have this one here. So this is by referring to the ID, not the name. So ID cannot be changed. It would be always, unless you close the file and open again. Otherwise, it would be, I mean, you close the file, open again, it would be still the same ID, unless you start a new one. Okay, so ID won't change, but name you can change it. So for example, instead of like this one, we can change it to say ABC. Okay, just a random name. You see, then if I run the code now, observe here, if I run the code, the name should be changed. Okay, no more. Let me stop here. Okay, right. So this is the name. We don't use this name here. Never mind. Let me change to this first. Right. So the name is not there, so that's why you have to change this a little bit. Run the code again. So observe that the new worksheet name is changed to ABC now. Okay. But of course, every time if you want to do it this way, you see, we encounter an error just now that you have to change the name, right? So one way is we don't use the name, but we use the ID. So select. Dot name. Let's say XYZ, right? So instead of using this kind of writing, we change it to ID. That means sheet 2 dot name. You see, now with this, you can always change the name without any problem. ABC. Okay, so the problem just now was using that like, you see that with the plural and then bracket here, we are referring to the name. So you have to use the name ABC. And when there is no ABC, you gets into an error. So we don't want that, so you can use ID. Okay, so it depends on scenario. Sometimes ID is better, sometimes name is better. But anyway, now if we change the word ABC to the value in cell A1, then you will notice that we can actually do that, say equals to C. Referring to a cell, you can use range and then type A1. Then run the code, you will see the name gets changed. Okay, so now, of course, to illustrate this one, so what we can do is we can add a button here, and then right-click, assign a macro, say rename worksheet, because we have edited this code, right? So now A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so we click this button, we expect the name to be changed to A, B, C, D, E, F, G as well. Okay. Right, so we click this one, you can see the name being changed. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can also do that. So you can change the name, sorry, through the macro. Of course, we have done this assign macro using to the shape, and then of course this is the rename worksheet. Edit this one, so it looks like this because we are using the ID, no longer the name. Okay, so that's on how do we actually edit the code. And now again, you can see most of the times, well, not really most of the time, sometimes you can actually use this macro recording to actually assist you, but you have to edit a little bit so that it becomes more flexible, or you can do it, use it in different scenario. Okay, so that's what we have here for this example 2. Any questions so far?
Is there hi? I have a
Hi.
question. Is there any way for us to create the sheet, for example, based on date? Because today it's 1st February. Tomorrow when we press it's 2nd February. Can we use any equation or anything in the editing?
Yes, you can, but there will be no special symbols such as like slash. So for example, let me go to this one, right? So let me zoom in a bit. So let's say if you want to add a new worksheet with the name today's date, right? So okay, so let's try this thing. So let's try to work out this one together. One of the ways is that, of course, a lot of times we try to figure out the code may be a little bit difficult. So again, because this is just a 2 hours session, so a 2.5 hour session. So I try to illustrate using macro recording, which should be easier. So we can try to record a macro and then edit the code later. So probably that would be easier. So you can click a recording and then say this is some give some random name, right? So new worksheet, some random name, doesn't really matter, right? So we click a new worksheet here, and then of course you rename here, because what you want to do, we can always imagine what we do is actually we want to create a new worksheet with the name as the date as the name, right? So split it into 2 steps. So add new worksheet, rename it. So renaming this one, of course, we cannot use like 6/. So you cannot press slash, you see, or backslash also cannot. So symbol usually are not allowed. Underscore is okay. Underscore is okay. But say we just want to use underscore 26 and then 2024, something like that. So of course, it depends on your how you want to format the date. So then we can press enter. Okay, then we stop the recording. Of course, we can look at this one, right? So we edit this one. Okay, so now with this one, this is the new code. You see, what we have done here is that the first part is you add a new worksheet, and then after the active worksheet, that is okay. And then you select this one, rename that. So you probably don't want to do that. So because the next time you add a new worksheet, it may not be sheet 7 ID anymore, right? So it could be number 8 or number 9 or number 10. So this part is where you need to edit a little bit. Let's say if I comment out this one, there are 3 lines only, right? So you imagine the process that we have done. You add a new worksheet, select the new one, rename it. So 3 steps. That's why 3 lines. So I put an apostrophe here to comment out this one. Okay, so let's try to run this code. You will probably get an error, right? So why? Because you see, we can add a new worksheet, but you cannot keep selecting this worksheet number 7 because we have renamed that. Unless you have not renamed that, that is okay. So this second line here will also be causing a problem. So let me end. Okay, so anyway, if you see this kind of warning message pop up, there are 2 buttons here. Help here usually is not helpful. You either end it or debug it. End means you basically just want to stop the running. Debug is where you want to see where is the error. So if you click at this one, let's see. The highlighted one is the one that is causing problem. I mean, probably there are other lines below it that will be causing problem as well. But this is the first line. So we want to get rid of this one. Okay, so you need to edit this one basically. So once you have this yellow color highlighted, right? So you just need to press a stop. If you look at the Windows title, there's a break here. So that means it is the code is running and then you take a break there. So we just reset this one. Okay, so we want to edit or remove this line. So what can we do is actually, let's look at the properties of adding a new worksheet again. Let's close this one. So let's say if I click a new worksheet, the add button, right? You see, now we are selecting sheet 8. But if I click a new one, sheet 9 will be selected. That means by default, Excel will always select the new worksheet. Okay, so that means to say, let's delete this one and also this one. Right, so that means to say this line is actually not important because default active worksheet will be always selected. So what we do is kind of like, let's say, can we change this one to active worksheet? And then we can try, right? So of course, these are just some of the habit when you are typing the code or editing the code. So you see, when I type, I try to use everything lowercase. Because you know that if you compare the first line and second line, so first line, the A and S here is capital letter, right? So I type everything in lowercase. This is the properties of VBA. We make use of that. When I click as elsewhere, other lines, right? So say the first line, we expect this S to be changed automatically to uppercase. So I know that, okay, no typo. Okay, so this is some tricks or habits. Okay, anyway, now if we have this one, then let's try running this code again. I press F5. So no error, you see, observe the cursor here. There is a small running, a very quick one. So running and then stop, right? So we run 3 times. So that we expect there will be 3 new worksheets. So 10, 11, 12, and the new worksheet is selected. So that is okay. Let's try one more time. Run again. Should be 13 now, and 13 is selected. We can't really see that. Right? So 13 is selected. Run one more time. 14 is selected. Okay, so now we have completed this part here. The next one is that you want to change the name, right? So how to change the name? Again, we cannot use ID now because we don't know which ID we are referring to. So we use active worksheet dot name equals to, you have to give a name, right? So of course, what we want to do here is to give a name that is the today's date. So let me just delete this one because we cannot have two worksheets that have same name, right? So delete this one first. Delete this one. And then we edit the code so that later on when we add a new worksheet, it should be the date, today's date. Of course, the ABC here, we have to just change it. So to change that, what we can do is we can use, let's try in Excel so that I can demonstrate this one. So usually one of the ways you can try some function in Excel, for example, today's date, right? So you can have can you have today, right? So you have this one, but of course you see we cannot use the slash in the name earlier. So what we can do is can we get the year, for example, equals to year of today. Okay. This is formatting issue, so you have to just change that back to number. Right? So remove the decimal. Okay, and then we can get the month of today. Okay, and we can get the day of today. Okay, so you will have month, day, year, right? So depending on how we want to arrange that. So you can see we are basically using the year, month, day of today's function. So we can kind of like follow the same idea in this case here. So we say day. Of course, this one I use a D here as a variable. It's the day of today. Okay, and you notice that today is not capitalized here. So probably this is not a function in VBA, although it is a function in Excel, but we can try. So try running F5, you see you get an error because this is not defined. So what we want to do here is you add application.today. You can do that, but I want the capital worksheet function.today. Let's try this one. Yeah. Worksheet functions. Okay. Never mind. We change a little bit. Instead of today, we change to now. Okay. So now should be better. And then let's see. We renamed it to D. Okay, just the date. And then we run F5 and see. We add a new worksheet 15 and then change the name to today's date. 26. 26 here, right? So you can see 26 here. Let me delete this one again. And then let's delete all this. Right, so we expect to add a new worksheet after the ABC. So F5, you see after the ABC, you get a 26. Okay, now using now here is basically similar to today, but it's actually using the time instead of the day, the date. Okay, but let's zoom in a bit. So of course you have the day, you can have the month, which is equal to month of now, and then year. Right, so using this one, then you have the day, month, year, and then if you want to give the name, we use the ampersand symbol, and then say underscore. So you have the what is that called, this what is that symbol, apostrophe, not apostrophe, but the one that is shift apostrophe on keyboard. Okay, this is basically to write the text. And day, month, and year. So the ampersand symbol is basically kind of like a glue to concatenate the text, right? So and day, month, year, and year. Okay, so this should be good. Then let's run this code again. Observe the 26 here. So you will get to the date here. Of course, by doing that, you cannot run this code twice per day because you will get an error. So the name is already taken, right? So we can end it because you know what happened. You cannot rename to the same name. Okay. So that is on how do we actually add a new worksheet, and then with today's date. Any other questions? Okay, so if no questions, then we move on to the next part. So where we are looking at the environment here. So you see, we actually deal with this editing the code a little bit in this VBA editor or environment, but we have not actually looked at some of the names. So it's just some names here. So you can press alternate F11, or by looking at this developer tab, Visual Basic, or developer tab, View Code. So through these two parts, you can actually bring up this developer tab, View Code, bring up this window again, which is the one that we are actually editing, right? So on the left-hand side here, you will see in this window, left-hand side. So this is the project here, and this is the properties. So there are few, you can actually click at different worksheets, and then you can see the properties here. You can rename that from here as well. For example, let's say this worksheet 19, I want to rename that to testing. So you can rename from here, and then you see I press enter. The Excel file should have a name, rename. Sorry, that one is to rename the ID. Okay, so kind of like the ID here. And anyway, so module is usually where you put in the code. So when you go, when you are more familiar, of course, sometimes you may put in a code inside like the worksheet, but most of the times you put it in the code in module. All the recording will be in a module. So if you double click the module, you will see these are the recording, and also these are the codes that we edited just now. If you double click worksheet 6, you will see a blank one because there's no code in worksheet 6. Okay, so the code here, of course, code here, recording always start with sub, and then the name of the subroutine, and then you end sub. So basically from sub to end sub is one whole subroutine. Okay, so properties here is basically where you actually can change some of the things. For example, like if you want to hide this worksheet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So you can go to the Excel file, right click and hide it. You can also change from here, the visible here, to say Excel hidden, right? So the number 2, Excel sheet very hidden. This one is where you cannot unhide it from outside. That means let's say try the 0. Okay. Let me zoom out a bit. Worksheet number 726. Okay, sorry. So let's hide this 26. After you click the hidden, 26 should be hidden, right? Yeah, so you can see the 26 is not there yet already. Right click, you can unhide all the worksheets. Okay, we can unhide them. But if let's say we go to this worksheet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you change it to very hidden, you will realize that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 you cannot unhide from Excel. The only way you can unhide is actually to click at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again, and then change this very hidden back to the visible. Okay, so these are basically the properties of the properties window. We won't go into too details again. And then object browser or object explorer. So you can press F2 when the editor is in focus. That means in here you can press F2 to bring up this one, or you can actually go to view and then object browser. Okay, so this is where you can kind of like find all the objects like active. Let me zoom in. Active cell, active chart, and so on. Okay, so printer. So this is basically when you want to like click a button and then print something, right? So something like that. But of course, sending to printer may not be so straightforward as like clicking the active printer. So this is where you can search for what are the objects that is available so that you can actually use a VBA to communicate with them. Okay, so that one is more for like going through the interface. Writing VBA code, we have actually seen a few here, and we will look at the debugging later as well. So we have looked at how to deal with like add a new worksheet. So worksheet is the object, add is actually the method, the name is the properties of the object, right? So we have to deal with this thing here. And then one thing to highlight is that when we use a macro recording, you probably notice that you always start from sub, end with end sub. You can also change it to like, for example, public sub and end sub. So these two would be basically, I mean, public sub and sub would be basically the same thing. Sub is a public sub. So when you say public sub, that means there is a private sub, right? So private sub looks like this. You start with private sub and then you have an end sub here. So what is the difference between public and private? Public here basically means that if you write it in under a module is this one, right? So recall, module is where you have this one under the module. So you can always right click, insert a new module, you see. There are user form class module. These are a little bit more advanced. We won't cover this thing here. So you can add a new module and then you can start write some code here, right? But anyway, so all the sub that is written under module, sub or public sub is the same thing. They can be called in any other way, any place, right? So that means in worksheet 17, you add a button, you click and run this code, that is okay. You go to worksheet 1, you add a button, click and run the code, also okay. That is public. That means everyone can actually call this, or anywhere you can call this function and run, or subroutine and run. Okay, but if you are looking at private sub, then you can't do that. Private sub can only be called from the same module or same worksheet. So usually you use this one when you want to be very specific that other worksheets won't actually interfere this function. Okay, but most of the times, again, we are probably using public sub most of the time. Okay, now this third example is a very simple example again, just to illustrate how do we refer to a worksheet, which is an object, or refer to a cell, which is also an object. We insert the current time to cell A1. Okay, so if you want, you can close the file, open a new Excel file, save the earlier one, or you can just start a new one. Okay, right? So close the previous one is better because you don't want to have very complicated project tree here. Okay, so we can close the previous file and then start a new one. Let's look at this case here. So, right, so let me close this one. So again, if you have any questions, you can drop a message in the chat box or you can turn on the mic. Right, so now let's look at this case here. So what we want to do now is that basically we want to write a function to insert the current time to here. So insert current time, basically we know the function, which is a now function, right? So we expect output to be something like this. And then of course, if we enter again, so we expect the time to be updated later on, right? So after it is 10:50 or something. So how to write a code? Alternate F11, or you can press the key buttons here, view code or the Visual Basic. Both also can, right? So now we start from a blank Excel. So you see this is very clean because you have only one worksheet. And then this is the whole workbook, the whole Excel file basically. We want to write the code in a module. So right click, insert module. So you have module 1. Of course, you can change the name here if you want, but we don't have to change that here because not too complicated code. When you deal with a large project, probably you want to change the name. So we start with a sub. So we are not doing recording here because we are trying to just type a simple one. Of course, you can use a recording as well. Doesn't really matter. To type from beginning, right? So you start with sub and then insert date. So this part here is the name of the function that you want. So you can give any name like ABC, doesn't really matter. Then press enter. Automatically, VBA will insert the bracket, open, close, and then end sub here. So then you can start to type what you want to do inside the subroutine here. That means between these two lines, in between these two lines. So usually I will press a tab so that I can see this is like indent into the left-hand side, sorry, right-hand side. Okay, so we can start typing this one. Say, for example, we look at range just now, right? So range A1 equals to now. So with this, then basically you insert the current date, sorry, the current time to the cell A1. Let's look at this one. We run the code and see. Okay, so this is blank. So I will press F5 in this VBA editor. You will see this is like 10:51, right? So I can delete this one again. So we can do that. But what would be the issue of this this way of writing is that you will always insert the date to cell A1, regardless of what is the worksheet. So in our case here, you see this one has only one worksheet, so no issue. But if I add 2 more, let's say, so you have worksheet 1, 2, 3. And if I run this code, we expect it to insert to worksheet number 3 as well, you see. They will insert to the current worksheet. Okay. So again, let's delete this one, right? So all 3 worksheets have blank cell A1. So now we run this one again. I selected worksheet number 2. I run this one. You will see they insert into worksheet number 2, but not number 3 and number 1. Okay. So this is basically if you want something to be flexible, then this is flexible because they will always insert to the current selected or the active worksheet. If you want something to be very specific to worksheet 1, so we can actually add something in front. So for example, let me comment this one, put apostrophe. That means this one becomes a comment. Comments here means that it won't be executed. Okay. Now, we can use, for example, sheet 1. This is by using ID, right? So dot range A1 equals to now. So if I'm doing this way, you will basically expect that the current time being inserted to worksheet 1, A1 only, regardless of what worksheet you are selecting. Let's try. Press F5 and run this one. And then you see nothing in worksheet 2, nothing in worksheet 3, but there will be a time in worksheet 1. Okay. So if you want something, you will basically worksheet 1, this is the object. Dot here, basically kind of like looking at what is inside this object. So the range that is inside the object. Okay. So this is one way. Another way is that you can also, instead of using sheet 1, we can also use the name like what we have done earlier, right? So let's rename the name first so that we don't get confused. This is number 1. Okay, so we rename the name so that we don't get confused here. Number 3. Okay. Right, so instead of using ID here, advantage is that you see we rename the name, you can still run the code and it has no error. Okay, but of course, you can also change this to like worksheets, open bracket, and then put in the shift apostrophe, that symbol, the name number 1 equals to now. Okay, so we can do that as well. Hey, sorry, I forgot to put the range, dot range A1. Okay, so we can do it in this way. Of course, this way is basically one of the good thing is that it's very clear that we are referring to which worksheet. You see, the ID you cannot see from Excel, but here you can see the worksheet name. So it's actually easier to read, but sometimes not that flexible, because if you rename the worksheet to N1, run this code again, you get an error. Okay, because the worksheet number 1 is no longer available. So let me just rename back. Okay, so both ways have pros and cons. Now, of course, we can comment out this one. Let me copy first, and then we comment out this one. Instead of using range, we can also change it a little bit to cell. CELLS, and then row 1, column 1. We can do that as well. So this case here would be good when you are trying to refer to row number 10, column number 10, something like that, right? So let's run this one. You see the time being changed. So let's say we change to row number 3, column number 1. I run the code again. You expect this one, row 3, column 1. Okay, so we can delete everything. So let's say row 3, column 2. Run the code. You expect something here, right? So there are a few ways of referring to a worksheet, as well as basically 2 ways, by the name or by the ID. 2 ways to refer to a cell, by range or by cell. Okay, so that's what we want to deal with here. Yes, so it's in the chat box. I'm not too sure if you can't download, you can let me know. I send again later. Okay, so you can download from the chat box here. There will be 1 PDF and 2 Excel file. So 2 Excel file are the example that we will go through later. Okay, right. Any other questions? Okay, so we take a short break, 3 minutes. We continue 11 o'clock. And meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can just drop a message in the chat box, and then we continue 11. Okay, right. So let's continue. So now we have looked at this how to write the code without looking at recording the video. Sorry, not video, macro. So now if you look at this part here, these are basically some of the techniques. Immediate windows, watch windows are some of the techniques that we use sometimes to do, like for example, debugging. Okay, so we will illustrate what is immediate windows, watch window, and also the debugging techniques here. Okay, so we will be using example 4 and then try to see how to play around with some of the features here. So immediate windows, we will basically work on this one separately. Let me just bring up the Excel file. Okay, right. So this is the VBA editor just now, right? Let me close this one. So probably the default one you have is without just now the bottom 2 small windows. You will see if you go to this view here, you will see immediate windows. So you can click at this one and then of course, so if you have any questions, just drop me a message in the chat box. Let me check. Okay, no, right. So click at view and then add the immediate windows. So let's go to the bottom of the window. So immediate window is basically where you want to execute the code line by line. So you will see in VBA, you must write the code in this way, sub, and then the name and sub in this way. Or another one is function. So we talk about functions later. Okay, but immediate window basically allows you to run the code without writing the sub and sub the proper code. Okay, so that means to say, for example, if you want to know what is time now, you can press down. So you see, I type the code now here and press enter. Sorry. So we get the question mark, and then now here, now is the function. Question mark is kind of like you are asking, right? So what is the time now? So we get this is 11:02:51. Okay, so if you press enter again, nothing special, you just press enter again, you will see it becomes sorry. It becomes, what is that? 03:08, right? But you have to be very careful because when you press the enter, the cursor must be blinking at the line that can be executed. You see, if I press enter, so it goes to the third line, the third time here, but the cursor is now here. Okay, so if I press enter, I get an error again, like what we have done earlier. Okay, so we can also start at a new line saying that, let's say we can run cell 11 to be equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I press enter. After I complete this one, I press enter, and then we expect, let me zoom out. So we expect that there will be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. Sorry. Formatting issue, we just change it back to number. So you will see this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, I can also change this to like A, B, C, D, E, and then press enter. General. Oh, sorry. This symbol, because we are typing a text, right? So you should have this one. Okay, so always remember when you want to key in or type a text, you should have this notation or this symbol here. Before the text and after the text. Okay, so now if let's say I change this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in this immediate window, sometimes you want to know kind of like you want to just quickly know what is actually the value of cell 11, right? So you can also do something like that. Range question mark is kind of like you want to read the value from the system. Without the question mark here, you see the previous line without the question mark, it's kind of like we pass the value into the system or into the Excel. Okay, so range A1. So we press enter, you will see you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. Okay, so again, question mark. You can also use cells 1, 1. So row 1, column 1, press enter, we expect a result of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that is the value in the cell A1. Okay, so that is immediate windows where you can actually use that to quickly just run a code and check what is the value, for example, or insert a value, something like that. Okay. So that is this one. The next one is you can actually debug and then add a watch. Add watch here. Watch is basically a window for you to observe what is the value of the variable. Okay, so let's say if I add a watch here, and you want to look at what expression you want to look at, right? So this one, you can type a T, let's say, or time. Let's say time. Okay, and then I click OK. So let's zoom out. You will see now I have the second windows here. There is a time here. Time here is the name. And then there's a watches here. So there's no context, nothing here. So what we can do is actually in this part here, right? So let's zoom in a bit. So what we can do is actually we can let time to be the now, right? So we pass the now to the time. Oh, sorry, time is used and so use a T instead of time. Okay, so that is better. So this one we basically delete it, and then it should be a T. Okay, right. So now with this, then you can see if I run the code, we can press F8 to run the, okay, F5 that we have used earlier is basically where you run the whole sub, right? So from first line to the last line, everything together. But now if you want to run this thing line by line, we press F8. Okay, so let me add as a command. F8 is inside the slides actually, run line by line. Okay, so I can press F8. You see, it will jump to the next line. T equals to now. Highlighted means we haven't run this thing. So I can run one more time and then run one more time. Okay, so ends up. So no more. Okay. Let me delete this watch and then add again. Add the variable T. Okay, right. So you will see if I run to this line, so you will see the variable of T has a value of 8 minutes 39 seconds just now, right? So continue one more time. You see out of context, run one more time. Empty, right? So because we started this one, T is now not defined yet, so that's why empty. And then run one more time. It's here, not yet run. One more time, F8. So you have the time here. This is 11:09, and then continue. And after you end up, it will be out of context. That means already ended. Okay, so that is watches. Watches is where you can actually watch the value of the variable so that you can basically debug that. So in order to debug the code, especially of complicated code, so what we can do is actually add these immediate windows or the watch windows. Usually watch window is for you to observe what is the value or how the variable changes throughout the code, so that you know, okay, where in which part the value changed to 3, which it should be 10, for example. Okay, so you can watch that slowly, easier. Okay, so now we look at example number 4. So that is one of the Excel file that actually I sent through the chat box earlier. So you can use that Excel file, download that. Let's download this one. So I will close this one, and then it should be here, right? So example 4. So open up this file. Of course, when you download from internet or the chat box, usually you will see a yellow color warning there saying that this is whether you want to enable the macro or not. So click enable. The code inside is just to change the font size, sorry, not font size, font color and background color only. Okay. So far so good. Okay, thank you. So now, once we have downloaded this file, what we want to do is just a simple example on how to do a debugging, right? So think we will skip the watch window part. We will just quickly go through this one. Hopefully, we have time to complete everything today. So we can basically use breakpoints, F8 keys, Shift F8 and Control Shift F8. Watch window we illustrated just now, so we won't use this one again. Okay, so let's look at what we have here. F5 is basically to run the whole code together, everything. F8 is to run line by line. Shift F8 is to step over the code. Control Shift F8 is to step out the code. So what does what are these two keyboard shortcuts trying to do? Let's look at example number 4, which is this Excel file here. Of course, we can bring up this VBA window, alternate F11. Oh, I can put here. Okay, so let's close this one, and then let me resize this a little bit. So you will see there are a few small windows inside this VBA editor. I think 3. Yeah. Right. So 3 windows. Why there are 3 windows here? Because let me zoom in a bit. Because there are 3 modules. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So I did not double click on the worksheet 1. So there's only 3. So what it means here? What are these 3 modules? Basically, are all different sub. You see. I have the first one, example 4. This is the core module. Sorry, example 4. This is the second module. So we basically, so I added this line here. All these are written, right? The code is written. I added this line is just for the watch window just now. So we have done just now, so we don't need this one actually, but just leave it there. Doesn't really matter. What we are doing here is a for loop. I will just explain the code a little bit. Selection here means when you select in Excel file, you click and drag, you select like a table, 3x2 table, something like that. So for each C in selection, that means for every cell in the selection, what we want to do if the value is greater than 1, you do a formatting. So what is this formatting? Is basically put a 1000 separator and no decimal. If the value is less than 1, less than or equals to 1, we don't put the 1000 separator, but we make sure that it has 4 decimal exactly. Okay, so this is a formatting done using VBA. Of course, all this code here, you can kind of like use a macro recording, Google or ChatGPT. You should be able to get the code quite easily. More importantly is how do we actually tweak the code to what we want. Okay, so there are some comments here. So we always leave comments. I mean, leave that to you to go through. Okay, so that is the first one, example 4. You can do a formatting, right? This one, like this one. Okay, and then there's another module. I put a Z here because I want to put it below example 4. So this subroutine is basically trying to change the font color to be the same as the interior color. So color or color index, we leave. I will just keep to color index first. We don't go into that. Okay, so what does that mean is that basically in this line, right? So it may look a little bit confusing. So we are saying that with selection, so the cell that you select, you look at what is the interior. Interior refer to the background color. So if it is white, so white is one color index, right? So the number will be passed to the font. That means we want to color the font color to be the same as the background color. So if the background color is red, the font color, we want to change it to red as well. So what is being changed automatically here is the font color. Interior dot color is not what we change, right? So it's what we read. That means maybe the user actually changed to green color. Then you run this code, the font color also changed to green color. Okay, so that is the idea here. Of course, it's not useful, but it's just a simple example. You may notice that it may not be working later. Okay, so there's the first module here called core module, right? So let's click at this one. So this is basically to call other modules. So you see, we have 3 modules so far. To format the numbers, to color the font color, to change the font color, and then you have the third one, which is to run these 2 modules together. So you can actually call the module so that you can use one keyboard shortcut or use one button to run 2 subroutines, right? So you don't have to click like button 1, change the format, button 2, change the color, click 2 times, no need. So you can click 1 time, change both of them. Okay, now that is what we have in the Excel file. So far, so good? So what you can see from here is that basically these are a bunch of numbers, some random numbers, and then thank you. Okay, so a bunch of number that we want to do formatting, like for example, this one, you want to do a formatting like this, and then without the decimal later, right? So let me undo this one. We leave all these things to the VBA. And then there's also a coloring part. So you can see that this cell, the background is white color. You hope that the fonts will be changed to white color as well. That means you kind of like don't want to see that, right? So eventually you want something like you change this to white color based on the background color. So if the background color is yellow, you want to change it to yellow color, this one, right? Something like that. Okay, so let's undo. We keep it as original. Okay, so that's what we want to do here. And of course, we can run the code from here. Let me click here. So I can run this code by pressing F5. So you can press F5 when you are clicking inside, anywhere inside here. Cursor is blinking inside, right? So you can see cursor is blinking inside. Press F5 to run the code. So you have run the code. Let me run one more time. You observe that the cursor that I'm moving here has a small change, right? So, okay, run complete. Okay, so we have formatted, we have changed the color technically. So let's look at the Excel file. Nothing happened, right? So we have to select the cell because based on the code, based on the code, you have to, for each C in selection, that means for each cell in the selection, so we have to select the table first, right? So we selected now. Let's try to run the code again, right? So let's go to here where we can run both subroutine together. Press F5 one time. Okay, completed. And then you see formatting is done, right? So it looks good now. Those that has less than or equals to 1, the value has 4 decimal. Those that are greater than 1, the value has 1000 separated and no decimal. So done. But how about the coloring, right? So you observe again that, how come the font is not white color? Because the background is white color. So for those who are familiar with Excel, probably you know where is the problem, because inside the coloring or the background color, there are 2 things. One is no fill, one is white color, right? So although you see, if I click white color, you won't notice any difference, right? And then I click this one to no fill. You won't notice any difference here. So, but then to Excel, this is actually different, okay? So we have to be very careful. If I change this to white color background now, you see I click at the white color again. We fill with white color. Now we run the code again. The font should be changed to white color. Let's look at that. So we run this one again. Again, observe that press F5, complete. Okay, right? So everything in white color. Okay, so that's why sometimes we have to be very careful with all these kind of small issue, not really an issue, but small properties of the Excel file, so that you know what is actually happening. Okay, so now of course, if we change this back to no fill and then run the code again, you see the fonts is not changed back to black color. That means to say to Excel or to VBA, no fill means like kind of like when you pass it to the font color, means like you are not doing anything. You don't want to do anything, right? So we change back to automatic. Okay, so that is what we have here. I mean, we can run the code later. So that is F5 when you run both codes together. Okay, so I will close this one. You don't have to close the file. I will close without saving. And then because I just want to illustrate what is F8 and the other two. Okay, right. So we will make this one smaller so that we can actually compare them side by side. Okay, good. Right, so under module, and then we have 3, right? So call other module. So we have seen just now that if I press F5, you can run the code. One thing to take note is that you run F5, you cannot undo, right? So that's why you see I closed the file and reopen just now, because we cannot undo that unless I reformat that. But close and open is faster in this case. Okay, now F8 here we have illustrated just now. We run the code line by line. You see, observe the yellow color highlights. Right, so this is at the beginning, so haven't run anything yet, and then go into this format, which is to call the function, and then you press F8 again, you will go to the format, which is this subroutine. Okay, so let's try. So press F8 one time. You see, you jump to here, and then you continue from here, and then you know, okay, this is the time, and then they will run one by one. So if I run cell by cell, you observe on the Excel file here. Let me zoom in a bit, right? So the formatting on this column A, you see, let me zoom up. Okay, so you can observe here, if value is greater than 1, then we do this format. Okay, so the formatting change, you see, after that, right? So continue from here, then we move on to the second cell, which is in B1, right? So this should be changed to 4 decimal. Let's try F8, so becomes 4 decimal. Okay, and so on. Okay, so that is F8 that run line by line, and you notice that you have a huge selection here, probably about a few hundreds numbers, 114 numbers, right? So how do you actually run line by line? Because it is going to take you a very long time to complete that running if you press F8. So of course, one of the ways that you can press F5 to just complete everything. But what if we don't want, right? We want to complete the formatting because we have checked that the formatting has no issue. You want to check whether the color has issue or not, right? So how to do that is that by looking at these two. Shift F8 and Control Shift F8. Stepping out the code, the last one, Control Shift F8 is to run everything that is inside the loop. So you see now, let me try one time. So we are inside the for loop here. Okay, this is like one loop, right? So Control Shift F8. You see, I will complete that format and jump to the color part. So you jump out from that function that you call. So you complete that whole thing. This part. So you see, everything is completed, but you have not done the coloring. Okay, so you press F8 to go inside that. You see, you can check what line by line again. Let me bring up. So you can check line by line again. Okay. Control Shift F8 to go out first, and then F8 to go into the color, right? So then you can change. This one should be one line only. Okay. So that's why I'm done. Okay. So that is one thing. Control Shift F8. That means you complete that whole subroutine and go out. but you don't complete everything. F5 complete everything. Then let's say if you run F8 again, Shift F8 basically is just to step over. That means we don't need to go into the format. You know that format has no issue. Directly jump from format to color. So let's close this one. Don't save. Illustrate this thing again. Okay, right. So let's put a coloring at the background so that we can see clearer. Okay, so of course now we know that by doing that, after you run this one, all the numbers should be formatted and then the font size should be in blue color. Okay, so if you use Shift F8, you press F8 first, and then go to here, Shift F8. You see, you complete all the formatting, but not yet the color. Okay, and then Shift F8, you complete the coloring. Okay. So that is between the four different what is that called, keyboard shortcuts. Of course, F5 is usually when you run everything, there's an error. We have shown just now that you see the warning message, and then the line that has error will be highlighted in yellow. So using F5 is in this way. F8, you check line by line so that you make sure every line is okay. The other two usually is when you know that the subroutine has no problem, you just want to get out from the subroutine, move on to the next one. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, right. So now let's look at the last part here where we create some user-defined function. Of course, it depends on the scenario. Sometimes you may have other tasks that you want to create, but we again look at some simple example. So, I think I accidentally sent the file that has yeah, you may see something like this. You can just enable the macro. Okay. Accidentally sent the coloring one, you can close that. The file that contains macro to you. So technically, we should be okay. We should be building this one from scratch. Okay, thanks. Where was I? Okay, this one, right? So let's look at a simple one. Okay, so comment and uncomment block. This one probably something that if you are writing a lengthy code, probably it would be useful. We can try to look at this one together. So for example, if let's say I want to comment out, all these are short code, but never mind. Let's say if I want to comment one line, right? So let me zoom in. So we can put this apostrophe symbol, right? So you don't have to edit the code. I'm just illustrating apostrophe, and then you change that to a comment, right? So for example, call the function total selected. Okay. So we can do that, comment. But then if let's say sometimes you want to comment out everything here, you want to comment out everything. So if you have only few lines, of course, easy. You can put apostrophe line by line, something like that. And then it takes only for a while. Okay, but you don't want to do that manually for a long code. So what you can do is actually you can go to the tools and then options. Hey, sorry, not here. Let me see. Toolbars, okay, and then edit comment block. So we can go to view, tools bar, and then customize, toolbars. Hey, this one. Let me remove this one under command. edit, yeah, edit. Okay, and then under edit, you can go to the right hand side. So you will see comment and uncomment block. So you will basically click this one, drag to where you want to put. For example, I want to put it here, right? So I can click and drag to this part. So I can put it, let's say here. Oh, oops. Sorry. Let me put it here. Okay, right. Yeah, so you will see the comment bar here, comment block, sorry. And then uncomment block, you can put it here. I mean, anywhere that you think you want to put, right? So you can click and actually drag. Okay. You want to remove that, also can. You can add it back here. Okay, right. So once you have this one, of course, what you can do is that it will become very quickly that you can actually comment the whole thing. So you highlight everything, you click at the comment block. So they will insert the what is that called? Apostrophe symbol for you. Okay, you can uncomment everything by highlighting and then click the uncomment block. Okay, so this is when you usually deal with a long code. You may need these two buttons. Very useful. Okay, so comment, uncomment. Okay, anyway, now technically we should be looking at, oops, sorry, the Excel file that is actually blank without the code. I forgot to remove the code before I send over to you all. Okay, but let's look at what we want to do here. We are trying to create a function that basically allow us to sum up everything that we have selected. Okay, so we may select like a few different cells and then automatically sum up for us. So we want to do that. There are a few ways of doing that. We look at something that is a little bit more interesting and simple. Okay, so first thing, we want to create a custom functions. So you remember all the codes that we have been dealing with start with sub, sub sub, and with the end sub. So over here, we want to look at function instead of sub. So we deal with function, not sub, because we will be using both actually, but function is the one that you actually can create a custom function. Okay, so for loop, we have looked at that earlier as well. So we look at that again. This one, right? So again, let's say if you have a table like this, you want to just add up the values here, say this one, these 4 values. Of course, this is a simple task. Usually in Excel, you highlight at the bottom right corner, you will see this is the average, this is the count, this is the sum. 2, 3, 5, 1, right? So that is one of the way. But anyway, you can also do something like this by saying that, okay, I highlight, I press on the keyboard shortcut, there is a message box telling me what is the total or what is the maximum minimum. We can do that, right? So let's try how to do that. So we just want to randomly sum some of the cell. Okay, so when throughout this process, you see what you want is to read all the selected cell. That is the first thing, read all the selected cell. So that's why never mind, we can add a new module. I mean, you can leave this one here. I will just start with a new one while we are writing. So I explain a little bit. So we start with a function because now this is something. Okay, function and sub, the difference is kind of like in subroutine, usually you deal with objects. You want to add worksheets, you want to delete worksheet, you want to change color and so on. You use a sub. Function is where you can actually you just want it to do something like calculations or whatever, read the value from the Excel file, know how many worksheets are there, you can use function. Okay, you can also create a functions that you can type inside the Excel. That is also okay, you use function also. But over here, we use function to get the total of the selected. So I have to delete all these things first. Otherwise, we may get an error later. Okay, so total selected, right? So this is a function, and then I press enter. Of course, you see they put in the capital letter bracket n function. What we want to do, of course, we mentioned just now, we want to read all the value, right? So read values from selected cell. Okay, better I zoom out so that you don't get too dizzy. That is the maximum font size that I can get in my screen for the VBA editor. Okay, we want to read the value. So we learned just now that selection is what you have selected. So in example number 4 just now, so for each C here refers to the cell. So for every cell that is in selection, what we want to do, we want to read value or do something, right? So I put a comment here, sum up the value, the individual cell. Okay, and then usually you end, sorry, next C. Okay, you end the for loop with next value, next cell, next C. Okay, so I can say total, which is the one that we want, equals to total plus C. You can use C dot value in case you think it may contain other things. Okay, so total, of course, in this function, I initialize the value to be 0. Initialize or reset. We use reset better. Reset total to 0. Usually function, you don't need to do that, but it's just my habit. Okay, so we set it to 0. You see the first cell that you have, and then 0 plus the value, and then you pass to the, you update the value. So it becomes 3, for example, and then 3 plus 5 becomes 8 again, and so on. So that is basically adding up everything. A simple and quick function. And then of course, what we want to do next is okay, display the message or result using a message box. So now what happened here is that if you want to use a message box to pop up like a prompt warning message or whatever, say, oh, selected cell is 300. The total of the selected cell is 300. So that one you have to use a subroutine. Okay, you cannot use a function because you deal with object now. Sub and then say this. What is the name that I used earlier? I try to use the same display total. Okay, so sub display total. Right. So how do we deal with this thing? Is of course there are a few ways. Let me just make sure that I write in the same way. Okay, so I put the message box here, but a better one should be in the display total. So you can edit this one later. So we can say, okay, now I have T or the result to be equals to total selected. And then message box. Message box, there are a lot of arguments, as you can see from here, but we use a simple one. We use a simple one just to say total of selected. You see, I put the symbol, this one again, because we are typing a text. Total of selected cells is so of course we can try press F5 and see, okay, you don't get this. Okay, I got to pass total selected equals to total. Then this should be better. Right, so 2476. Okay, so one thing that I missed out just now was this one. So when you write a function, let me zoom in so that you can see clearer. When you write a function, you always pass back the value to the function name, you see. So we have to pass back so that the function has a value. Otherwise, without this line just now, you can see that this is actually empty. That's why the first time I run the code, I don't see the total. Okay, so we have to pass back what is the value you want to the function name. Should be the same name over here. Okay, that is one thing. Second thing here is that you see I remove or I actually change the message box instead of the original one that is inside this function total selected to this display total, because usually it would be a better practice if we use subroutine to deal with all these kind of objects. Function, you deal with all the functions or calculations based. Okay, so that would be better. But of course, the previous one, I think it has no error as well. Okay, so and what we have now is that now we see we run this code, we don't run this code, right? So function, you cannot run that. Function is the one that you call it to calculate. Okay, so you see, let's add comment here so that we can follow. Zoom out. This is to read, call function total selected and pass the value to variable result. Okay. So we pass variable, pass the value to result, and then of course we can now display the total through message box. Okay, so that is what we have, and of course message box here, you see there is this part here which is actually a text. So this is a text including the symbol like shift apostrophe. So there's a white space here because we don't want the number and the is together. Without this one, you will see that they will join together. Let's try. If you press F5, you will see the is and the number are joined together. So you need a white space there so that you don't get the same thing again. Okay. So of course, if you need comma, then you have to just put in the n and then this symbol dot, and then so that you have not comma as full stop, right? So you have the full stop here. Okay, so that is basically the subroutine. Okay, we have one message here. Let's see. Okay. Can you explain that? Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, so this part here is a for loop. Let's look at the simple for loop first. Let me try here. So let's select this tree, and then I will write a a new function sub, and then say display selected. Okay. So what we are trying to do here is that, of course, now I just want to use a message box to show all the selected cells. So for example, usually you start with for loop and then now you are dealing with selection. So you have to use for each C. This one is together, right? For each C in selection. So selection here, this one refers to the 3 selected cell. Of course, it could be this 3 or this 4. Okay, doesn't really matter. Let's stick to this 3. For each C in selection. And then, of course, you can close the for loop first, so that we don't forget that later. So next C. Next C here means the next cell. Okay, so message box, C. So we bring a message box to tell us what is the selected value. Let's run this code. So you will see I get a 293 here because this is the first cell. And if let's say we look at the code, wow, the renovation is very noisy. Okay. So they are basically in the first cell and at the message box here, this line. Okay. So if you press OK on the message boxes now, they will run to the next C. Okay. So let's try. Click OK. You expect the next cell 791. So you will see 791 here. Next cell. Okay. And then you press OK, they will move to the next one, 573. So that is basically the next C, what next C is doing. So you have to have that, otherwise you will get into an error because it's without a next. So that means you start with any 4, you must end with the next. Okay, so you have to end with the next C because you are using C here. The C and the C is the same. Okay, so same as you start with any sub, you have to end with the end sub. You start with a for loop, you have to end with the next. So of course, for every C here or every cell here, you have to move to the next cell. So then once you have this one, of course, you can see 293, 791, 573. And of course, now we can select the cells separately. And then we run the code also. You will see 200, 489, and then 973. So how Excel read the selected cell is basically from left to right, and then from up to down. Okay, so let's say this 4 cell, you expect 8, 195, 87, 200. 8, 195, 87, 200. So once you have this one, of course, the next part here is that instead of just looping or reading through all the cells that we have selected, we want to add up the value, like the one that's shown in the message box. So it's kind of like the first value C, right? First value is let's say in this case 8, and then okay, let's do a message box total so that we can actually read what is this. So you see, the first one is 8, right? So the next one should be 195, but it will become 195 plus 8, which is 203. And then click OK again, 203 plus 87, 290. 290 plus 200, 490. So that would be the total value. So total is 490. So that is, of course, this one you can remove that. We try not to include message box in function. That's a good habit of practice. Okay, so that is the for loop with total. So this is like, of course, you can imagine initially it should be a 0 plus a value C8, so it becomes 8. And then the next value comes in 197 plus 8, so it becomes 203. And then the 87 comes in plus 203 becomes 290, and so on. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, right. So now, of course, last part here is that we don't want that we always have to go back to the editor and then click F5 to run the code, right? Because sometimes you create this one, you hope that let me close the editor, so we can close this one. Don't close the Excel file. If you want, you can save this one. We hope that when we send this one to colleagues or friends, they can click a button to run the code, right? So you can either insert a shape or you can use a keyboard shortcut. So let's try with a keyboard shortcut, developer tab again, and then you can go to the macro, the second button here, and then display total, right? So technically we don't have this one. So display total, click options, and then we can add like a keyboard shortcut, say K, and then click OK, and then close this one. So now we can try to play around. Say we randomly select a few numbers here, and then Control K. Oops. You get 1390 for all this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 selection. Okay, so selecting these two, Control K, you get the total 707. Okay, so that is the idea here. Of course, you can see functions that we go through may not be functions that is commonly used in real life, but the main idea again is that we try to look at what are the structures of the VBA or Excel file, and then try to look at how do we perform a debugging so that we can actually edit a code that is from ChatGPT to fit to our needs perfectly. Okay, so that is what we have today, and we will end here. Before we end, I think we have to take a photo. So before that, thank you for coming. If you have any question, please drop a message in the chat box. Let me check. So if you have any questions, drop a message in the chat box. You can scan the QR code for the evaluation as well. Think we have to take no problem. We have to take a group photo. Let me set up my
Could you
webcam.
please turn on your video?
Yeah. So please turn on the webcam, and then we will take a group photo. Let me see. How to do this. Let's see. Okay. Myself. Okay, so I will stop the screen sharing and okay. Emma, can you see me?
Yes, can.
Thank
Can,
you.
can. So I will take the screenshot now.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on now. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Let me check first. Okay. Okay, that's it. And please scan the QR code for the evaluation, yeah? I
Thank
already
you.
post it in the chat box. Thank you so much for
Thank
attending
you.
the National Training Week. Thank you.
Emma, will the recording be shared to the participants?
Yes. I will
Okay.
share the link. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes.
How to end? Yes.